Everyone. We're going to start on time today because I don't think anybody's having trouble finding the place or a place to park. My name is Mark Hobner, and I will be the referee tonight, the moderator tonight for both Drawdown East End and the North Fork Environmental Council. I want to introduce and thank Joanna Farron from Rogers Memorial Library for running the show for us today. I also challenged her to create breakout rooms for our 4 panelists, something we've not done in the time of COVID yet. A challenge she eagerly accepted. If it all falls apart, you will know it. It will not be her fault, and it will be on me to make sure that we go to plan B. In order for us to replenish and regenerate our once completely functional planet, we're called on to change our habits. Today, we will hear from 4 experts on how to do just that within the framework of our lawns and landscapes for the future. These are called best management practices. They are techniques which are very simple in concept and just as easy in practice, and will provide benefits at every level from our personal stewardship. One of the goals of the breakout rooms is for the attendees to state just one behavior that they're excited to adopt, and our panelists will make notes on which one struck them as being most effective, most interesting, most ambitious, and so on, and bring them to the entire group when we reconvene. Since we're using the breakout rooms as our question and answer segment, we will be using the chat feature at this meeting for questions on topics in the other breakout rooms that you did not attend. So you're not going to miss out on anything. Let's get started. Ellen Bialo of Drawdown East End has a few words to start us off. Ellen?
Yeah, hi, welcome. So we kind of seek to help the world reach drawdown, which for those of you who don't know is a future point in time when the level of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere stops climbing and starts to steadily decline, thereby stopping, hopefully, catastrophic climate change as quickly, safely, and equitably as possible. So our gathering tonight is part of our effort to start a community conversation about ways that we can create the future we want and how we can start now, as Mark said, to take actions that facilitate drawdown. So our current lawn and landscaping practices are not sustainable regarding water quantity or quality. And as Mark said, we have all the best management practices available to us to change this for the better. So tonight, we hope that each of you will commit to one action that will improve the health of both your property and the community at large. And we will be exploring many ways to do that. And I would like to leave you just with a couple of quick statistics in my 1 minute that Mark gave me. The first is that homeowners apply an estimated 66 million pounds of pesticides per year to their lawns and gardens. And this does not include applications made by pest control or lawn care professionals. These pesticides cause the death of an estimated 7 million birds per year. Okay, and one other little fact. Finally, on Long Island, a study that tested groundwater and well water found that more than 10 different pesticides, some in levels exceeding the maximum allowable dose, and 51% of private wells sampled back in 2002 were contaminated with pesticides. So just some things to think about as we move into our future. Thank you, and hope you all learn a lot tonight.
That was excellent, Ellen. Thank you so much. And all my Drawdown associates who are here and showing up that I see as well. I realized while I was making the introduction and thank you slide that none of us is alone in our efforts. We have an amazing collection of talent in our Peconic Bay region, and only through collaboration will we succeed in achieving our individual organizational goals. But this is collaboration at every level between individuals, friends and family, civic and nonprofit organizations, and our local community governments. All of our actions are compounded when we work together, no matter how simple the effort. So let's dig in. We're going to do brief introductions. Welcome, panelists. If you could tell us your name, who you represent, your title, and a little bit about your passion with regards to your work. You each have about 6 minutes, and I'll give a 1 minute warning. Let's start with Roxanne.
Oh my goodness. Okay, hi. Let me share my screen. Okay, so let's see, slideshow from beginning. I've done this a few times, right? So my name obviously is, if I get this slideshow to go from the beginning, let me just see here. I'm just trying to move it. It's not working. Okay, so I'm Roxanne Zimmer, Chair of Community Horticulture for Cornell Extension in Suffolk County. Can you just see the slides at all or nothing?
Not yet.
Okay, so Okay. We just saw the whole slideshow. Okay,
There it is.
no, then it just went back. Okay, let me just try it again from the beginning. So I have the pleasure of teaching Master Gardener training. We just graduated a class of 30 people who've got wonderful action projects, including concerns about what we plant, more native plants, and our water use. I love coming to libraries, schools, and groups like this. If you've got a question, just drop me a note, rz378@cornell.edu. Some of you may know that you can call our hotline with any questions, 631-727-4126. If you're concerned, if you see your neighbor spraying this, that, or the other on our lawn, and those hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to noon. I'll say more about this wonderful event that's coming up with Doug Talemay, Spring Gardening School. Some of you know Doug Talemay is one of the advocates for planting, making the right choices as gardeners in our lawns, in our backyards, and indeed recreating a space where there's much greater biodiversity. But what I want to just say a few words about is one of the things that I would like us to rethink is the lawn. We need to reduce the lawn for all kinds of reasons. The wear, the tear, the water, and instead we need to think about planting food there instead, whether it's a backyard garden, whether it's a small space in the yard. Here's my daughter planting her beans. We can dig that soil or find an easier way to do it, or even drop some topsoil and compost. But the goal is to reduce the amount of space that we're just leaving to this green grass that we've all fallen in love with. Here's a group of teens from the South Fork planting on a side garden, making food available to people, or more excitingly, going to the front yard, rethinking that lawn and planting our vegetables there. And you just take a look at what delightful shapes and colors of leaves you will see if in fact you thought about planting food in your yard instead of grass. And look at how fantastic that kale looks against the conifers. So I'm not asking you to get away with, have no lawn at all, but rather reduce the amount of space here, on the side, on the front, and to make it a much more inviting, biodiverse community, so that you might have your vegetables planted right up by the front porch, whether it's Swiss chard or onions, that you can think about maybe putting a fence around it and then planting your vegetables there. Or a wonderful little herb garden at the front of your property, so that you are indeed making your front yard and your backyard much more inviting, much more attractive. And that's what I'm hoping we can do tonight, if anyone wants to talk about how to reduce the lawn and increase biodiversity in your backyard or your front yard. And that's it. Is it okay on the 6 minutes? I didn't get my 1 minute warning.
No, you've actually come under, so we owe you 2 minutes somewhere.
Okay, great. That's fine. That's good.
Perfect. Thank you, Roxanne. Tamsin, yay.
Tamsin, we can't hear you,
Unmute.
Tamsin.
You're muted.
There we go. Now you can hear me loud and clear, I'm sure. I work with the pest management program for Suffolk County properties, which allows me to see a lot of the inner workings of Suffolk County historical buildings and things like that. There is a pesticide phase out in Suffolk County. So one of our big things that we do is we try to find ways for the county to do things without using pesticides. And we also do something which is very important, and people don't talk about it much because they don't think about it, but we help people to identify things correctly. A lot of times people will try to treat something first and ask questions later, but you always want to ask questions first, because half the time what you're looking at isn't what you think it is. Even somebody like me who's, you know, been fiddling around with this stuff, I need my microscope, I need my hand lens, things like that. But anyway, I will be in a breakout room and I will answer questions about routine lawn practices, how to reduce the lawn. And I will tell you right now, I got rid of my lawn because Long Island is not a suitable place for growing lawns. We have these tremendous temperature and moisture bounces. You're out there in the morning in your fur coat, your fall fur coat, and by noontime you're in your bikini, which is a very bad idea for people like me. But at any rate, you've seen the weather patterns, and they're just going to get wilder. So I think we need to rethink what we're planting and think about planting for sustainability, and also planting so that the poor pollinators don't have interruptions all the time. Let's get some sort of not bioswale, but some sort of river of plants that they can utilize all season long instead of the lawn. And it's not difficult to start at all.
Wow, that was quick. All right.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Brian Smith, please.
You know, Tamsin is a very tough act to follow, so that's kind of unfair to have somebody as vivacious as that, and then I come on. So, hi everyone. My name is Brian Smith. I am Vice President of the Long Island Native Plant Initiative, known as LINPI. You're going to hear a lot of acronyms. We are also in charge of the Long Island Invasive Species Management Area, known as LISMA. Now, it's a very nice partnership between the two organizations. You know, native plants can be very fun and very, you know, uplifting. And then we have to talk about our ugly stepsister, invasive plants, or invasive insects, or invasive pathogens, whatever the case may be. So I'm going to save my slideshow for the breakout room, but I did want to mention that as a lifelong nature lover, I really do see the benefits of having a green space in your backyard. One of my favorite things, pastimes, has been to, I love nothing more than reading a book in my backyard in the summertime, under my shade tree with the sound of birds in the background. To me, it was just a really peaceful way to spend the summer day, and that's kind of disappearing in our lives. We have leaf blowers, we have lawn mowers, we have weed whackers, we have everything but the kitchen sink outside. And, you know, in today's discretionary spending, a lot of people do have the kitchen sink outside. We've moved ourselves outdoors, which was great, but it was also at the sacrifice of really enjoying nature. So I'm hoping to kind of bring people back to that sense of creating a sense of peace and wonderment, and having a little bit of a bird sanctuary in your backyard right now.
All right, you cede your time to the next guy who's going to have to talk for 15 minutes. Excellent as always, Brian. Thank you. And a new face to our efforts, Anthony Marinello.
I can definitely talk if you need me to. All right, so my name is Anthony Marinello. I am the owner of Dropsy Native Landscapes, and I use permaculture techniques to implement native plants. And I give consultations, designs, and implementation for people who are wanting to add native plants to their landscape. I'm going to share my screen and do a presentation real quick. Okay, so native plants and permaculture for carbon sequestration. So I'm gonna take this, everyone can see the screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to take this from two different angles, our food systems and also our landscaping at home. So why native plants? They're genetically diverse, they're climate adapted and pest disease resistant. They are the foundation of our local food chain. They are the primary producers, and they act as hosts for their respective insect specialists. They're low maintenance compared to traditional turf and ornamental and annual food crops. They're water-wise, and they preserve and help build our soils. I'm sure plenty of people have seen this little graph. You could see all of this biomass underground in the root structure compared to what's above ground. All the way to the left, you'll see Kentucky bluegrass, and that's, you know, as low as the roots go, but all these native prairie plants, they really go, you know, up to 15 feet deep, while the tops of them are, you know, 7 feet tall. So most of the biomass of the plants are actually underground. What is permaculture? In short, permaculture is the growth of agricultural ecosystems in a self-sufficient and truly sustainable way. The long definition is a lot longer than that. I won't get into it. So for livestock systems, I want to speak about holistic grazing, which has the ability to restore native grassland and then sequester carbon. They restore the soil and the water table. It creates wildlife habitat, and it provides a local animal protein source for the community. Silvopasture is similar. It can lead to habitat restoration, carbon sequestration, and it mimics a few of our native plant communities, such as prairie thicket, oak savannas. We have a few of those communities on Long Island, especially out east. They produce, again, nice animal protein for the local community, as well as secondary and tertiary crops of nuts, fruit, and timber products. So one example is Iberian cork and cork oak silvopastures of Spain, if anyone's ever had the luck of eating some Iberian pork. So this is an example of a Dehesa silvopasture, which is acorn finished Iberian pork plus cork. So these pigs, you know, have the life. They live, they freely roam their pastures between the oak trees. They eat all the grass and, you know, rummage for roots and grubs and everything. And then they finish on oak, they finish on the acorns, and that produces great marbling for the pigs and increases their value. So that's something great for farmers, or also if you are just simply looking for food for yourself, to select meat products from farms that practice this sort of holistic rotational grazing. So this is an example of land restored with holistic grazing in Zimbabwe. And this is from America. This is down south, with the longleaf pine plantation, but also they use cattle. They use beef cattle. So silver pasture could reduce CO2 emissions by over 31 gigatons by 2050 if it were to be ramped up from current 251 million acres to 554 million acres worldwide. That's from Project Drawdown. Native plant agriculture, the utilization of native edible plants as food crops. So food forest systems, you can mimic a natural forest with each floral layer consisting of various native edible or utilitarian crops. Forest gardens, so if you're at home, instead of walking out into your yard where you just have a lawn and a patio, you could have a patio surrounded by a food forest where you have a beautiful woodland in your yard that provides you with fruit, nuts, fresh greens, herbs, all sorts of good stuff. Perennial food systems, design and implementation of native perennial food crops, so blueberries, elderberry, pawpaw fruits, black walnut, American hazelnuts, and then different types of agroforestry, so rotation harvest, coppicing, pollarding, silvopasture, and these create mixed habitats of brush woodland at various stages of succession, minimally disturb the soil, and the trees are harvested and then allowed to regrow. So it's a continual harvest and regrowth. You're not actually killing off the trees and creating more emissions. You're just actually just absorbing all the CO2 and drawing it down into the earth or into the wood that you then use for what you need for. So this is an example of the different layers of a food forest. You would use, depending on where you are, you could use, a lot of permaculturists will use invasive exotic plants if they grow in the zone that you're in. But I gave native examples here if you wanted to do it all using native plants. So here's some options for you real quick. So you could have some, American persimmon as your top layer, native crabapple or Canadian plums as your second layer of lower trees. Your shrub layer could be highbush blueberry, chokeberry, American plums, and you go down to sunchokes, echinacea, wild strawberry, groundnuts as the roots, and then some vines as the final seventh layer of crawling up all these trees. You get wild grapes, black raspberries, pops, filters, like that. Here is an example of the various stages and habitats that a woodlot that's coppiced on rotation creates. So you can see on the left, there's a plot coppiced during the preceding winter, and you would leave one or two large trees, and then all of this would just be stumps filled with forbs and grasses the first year, and then within 5 years growth, you have the shrubby growth in the center, and then 1 year's growth, you have this little bit of growth, and that's adds to the diversity of the area and creates different habitats which would be utilized by different wildlife. So some benefits of growing native plants at home: they're highly ornamental, they provide multi-season interest, they reduce fossil fuel-derived nitrogen-containing fertilizers. So for every ton of nitrogen fertilizer made, 4 to 6 tons of carbon are typically end up in the atmosphere. That's from Audubon. Estimates vary from 16 billion to 41 billion pounds of CO2 being emitted from lawnmowers every year. You can create wildlife habitat. Like I said, they're the foundation of the food web. They provide fresh food right at home, so there's no carbon footprint. You just step outside, like I forget who said it previously, where you have your kale or whatever right outside your front door. So that in permaculture, that's zone 1. So you could design your home and your yard to be, service you, service wildlife, but also provide food for your family. Act as a carbon sink. The extensive roots of native grasses and forbs, they store carbon underground. That chop and grout mulching that you do every year, instead of chopping everything down, throwing it in the garbage and having sanitation come take it away at the curb, you leave everything in your soil, in your garden, where then that turns into more fresh soil and it stores all that carbon. So 1 minute, Anthony. Okay, I got one more slide, I think. So carbon sequestration and carbon offsets and reduction. So studies of all have shown that storage rates vary between 0.30 and 1.7 metric tons per acre per year. And that's cumulative, so over time that increases. Forest sequestration is offset approximately 15% of annual fossil fuel carbon emissions. And you can sequester livestock agriculture by your holistic rotational grazing. Reduce the need for irrigation, because all of these plants are very climate-wise and they don't need access to irrigation. They've evolved under our climate. And you can emit carbon footprint if you're just stepping outside your door. That apple didn't have to get driven to the supermarket, didn't have to be at home. Thank you to everybody.
All right, that was amazing, Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to do 2 lightning rounds, but based on the brevity of the last section, I think that's going to turn into 1 word. This is going to be like a quiz show here. But please take a full minute, and we want everyone to spend time with the panelists of their choice. We're going to do 2 lightning rounds of 1 minute each right now, and that should give our attendees an idea of where they would like to apply their own efforts and choose a breakout room. So we'll go in the same order as before. Sorry, Brian. Roxanne, Tamsin, Brian, and Anthony. First question is, with 1 minute, no warning, your mic will go dead and we'll simply move on. Your mouth will keep moving. What future are we striving to achieve? Roxanne.
Well, there are many things we're trying to achieve, and carbon sequestration is very important. I would just like to encourage folks to think about food waste. We spend all this time, farmers spend all these time and these resources growing our food. By all means, let's make sure we eat what is grown. As you know, Americans are have the largest food waste footprint in the world, and we need to do whatever we can to grow our food, enjoy it, and eat it rather than toss it, even if we put it in the compost pile, which is a good place to put it, but we should be eating it instead.
Okay, thank you. Tamsin.
Heat island effect. People don't think about the re-radiating heat from all of their cobblestones and their Belgian block and their driveways and their hard surfaces. I believe that this is starting to really make the weather weird on Long Island. It's steering a lot of our storm systems either up towards Connecticut or away from us. We're experiencing longer and longer droughts, which means people are using more and more water to keep the things green. We don't want to be doing that. We're going to run out of water eventually. We've been lucky so far, but that doesn't mean that we will always do so because of the tremendous water we're pulling out of the ground. So one of the things I want people to think about is I want them to think about the heat island effect and how cooling can be accomplished with just a couple of well-placed native trees or shrubs. And I want them to think about not using all that water because grass avoids stress by becoming dormant. We have to learn to be able to live with that, or else we're going to end up really fouling ourselves up permanently.
Very succinct. Thank you, Tamsin. Brian.
I think we have to strive for living in a livable world. We have to share what we have with our fellow creatures. We are in the midst of an insectageddon, or an insect apocalypse, as some people like to call it. Insects are disappearing at a very rapid rate. They lay the foundation of the food web. Without insects, we're not going to have birds. We're not going to have pollination. There's a whole platform here that we're trying to emit because we don't want to get bit by a mosquito or bit by a tick, and those are good things. But you know, in the same breath, we're also depriving children of the opportunity to chase fireflies on a warm June, July evening, and that's a part of life. And we really have to kind of say, you know what? I have a place on my property. A bird can nest here very easily. I can have a raccoon run through my yard. I can have a squirrel come over the fence. We can do a lot on our small properties, and we just need to give nature a chance to have a place to live.
Thank you. Anthony.
Looking for a greener future that supports more than just one species. You know, we share the world. We've shared the world for, you know, millions of years, and we're, you know, like Brian said, we're in the midst of the sixth mass extinction. We're calling it the Anthropocene, where humans now shape the planet, and you know, that's fine as long as we make sure there's room for other beings to share the planet with us instead of just destroying everything that we see fit. And permaculture, I feel, offers a way to reach that goal of supporting, you know, the children of all species through all of time and not just our own.
Okay. Next, second question in the lightning round. We want to present action items for people to adopt. And what can people do at the local, urgent, personal level to create that future? Roxanne.
Be mindful of what you plant. You know, we're gardeners. We put stuff in our backyards, in our front yards. Make the right choices. You know, maybe you don't have, you know, we should all be planting oaks if we follow the wisdom of Doug Talemay, because they support so many species. But if we don't have the yard for it, look at a dwarf chinkapin or a scrub oak, which indeed will provide those important elements that support our biosphere.
Tamsin.
We need to get over our fear of nature, especially people on Long Island. They're scared of nature. We need to embrace the interesting aspects of insects and spiders and things like that, because not only will we learn, we will benefit by helping them to survive, and we will discover something, a world of beauty that doesn't involve digital things. Also, on your own property, you can start by reducing your lawn by 1/3. It doesn't take that much to do so, but you save 1/3 on all of your inputs. You're going to save water. You're going to make it better for creatures, etc.
All right, Brian.
If you could take a big step in removing an invasive plant, or even a plant that has low wildlife value, and replace it with something that has more nutritional value or something more to offer than just looking pretty. I want to use an example of burning bush. That was the first bush that I removed from my property, and I replaced it with a viburnum lentago known as nannyberry.
Yeah.
That is a tree that is more capable of as a nesting site, as a berry producing tree. It's not easy. You know, we are designed to save things, and here we are asking you to remove something and it's not going to live, but that's a much better thing. It's a much better alternative than having something that's going to blow into a woodlands and displace our ecosystem. So if you can work up the bravery to do it, I know it's not easy, but remove something that is invasive. And that was a list that was put together by a vast group of professionals. It wasn't, nobody woke up one morning and said, how can I screw with people today? I know, I'm going to bar this one tree plant from being on your property. Listen to professionals. They're there for a reason. They're telling you this for a reason. Remove something invasive or that has low wildlife value and replace with something fertile.
I'm going to jump in before I let Anthony speak on that. Cornell has the Long Island Horticulture Guide. It is broken out by salt-resistant, deer-resistant, rabbit-resistant, neighbor-resistant plants, and what to use instead. It's not just don't do this and don't do that. It's put this in, take this out, and here are the 6 things that you can replace it with. I'm going to be putting those kind of documents up onto our Dropbox site so that everybody can have these in the future. We'll send everybody the link. Even if you couldn't make the meeting tonight, you'll get the link to all of that. Anthony, what can we do for action items?
Buy yourself a guide, a field guide, or buy a child in your life a field guide. There's just nature blindness going on. We're very big on brands, but we're very small on knowledge of what's outside. There used to be a time where that was just the way of the world, where children knew what kind of tree that was. They knew it was a maple, they knew it was an oak. They knew what a serviceberry was. Nowadays, we don't know what that is. Or even join a community, a club. Like I know a few of you are members on, I created the Long Island Native Plant Gardening Group on Facebook. And I have a full library of files as well and I'm sure some of them are from the Cornell CCE as well. That will help guide people to planting more native plants and removing the invasives, as we've spoken about, and really get yourself on track for creating a healthier, more ecologically functioning landscape on your property.
All right, thank you, Anthony, again. Now it's time for our breakout rooms where everybody can follow people into a room. Joanna has assigned a numbered room for each of our panelists, 1 through 4. Attendees are invited to follow them there according to their interest and furthering discussion, kind of a stalker's delight. We are looking for each attendee to describe to the panelist in their room what interests them most about making a change in their own lawn and landscaping behavior and practices. This is called, in the social marketing business, public commitment. So each attendee would make a pledge to adopt one behavior change in their area of interest and capacity. If the panelists could please make a note of the 2 or 3 most interesting or ambitious or simple things that their attendees share with them. We're going to take about 20 minutes with a 3-minute warning. We'll reconvene at about 7:28 and share our commitments to each of the panelists who've got a different interest. Roxanne was talking about food waste. Anthony was talking about leave the leaves. Brian was talking about pollinators. Tamsin talked about water. And right now in the town of Riverhead, the Environmental Advisory Committee will be working on all of those things individually with the town and with the people. Water has been an issue, of course, because we were going through almost 20 million gallons a day, up from a normal, I think, I want to say 9 million gallons a day during the winter, and it went to 20 for this summer. Wow. Because of the heat and the dryness. So we've got to make a concerted effort. We've got a program right now, a pilot program for water reduction, and it incorporates not just the residential, but also the schools have chipped in, and they were running their own program for changing the sprinkler heads and getting smart sensors. Mm-hmm. And Pulaski Street School is setting up a rooftop capture with rain barrels in a rain garden.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks to some of the initiatives from Norfolk Audubon Society, and I'm sure everybody knows Robin Simon, who got that one started at the Red House in Greenport. So we're going to be mimicking and mirroring that for Pulaski Street School. One of the Environmental Advisory Committee people, Amanda Loth, Bracaniello, has a very solid background in project management, and she's got some really extraordinary skills to draw that out with software. And she's done very well with that. And the third one, we're going to be going to the mobile home and manufactured home associations and trying to get people to put in low flush toilets. So we've got grant money for that. It's something that's easy to do. It's a one-off. We want to involve the maybe the trade schools, or maybe even the trade organizations and the unions to actually help implement that on a larger scale. But we'll be starting small at 30 pieces here and 30 pieces there. We've got a food waste reduction and education intervention going on for the last year and a half. Mary Morgan's on that team with Sherry Thurlby. And I just heard that yesterday that the town of Riverhead, the sanitation department, is looking to implement a food waste capture so that we can start capturing the greens to put with the browns to make composting a lot more attractive. So that's what's going on in one corner of the world anyway.
Wow. I've never seen Tamsin before, and it was really interesting, her thing on the heat producing structures. That's not something talked about much that I've heard.
Yeah, we have to talk about greenscaping and I mean, hey, Anthony was talking about, or Brian was talking about having trees near your house to cut down on your air conditioning bill. But it's and we're talking about adding that to town code, and how do you prevent people from chopping down all of their trees? Can you make it just half?
It's driving me nuts. I'm seeing it everywhere.
I know.
Yeah.
So what we're thinking is like an offset program. Angela DeVito came up with that when I was talking to her in the last day or two. And if you're going to cut down more than 50% of the trees, you go do an inventory, and then you buy an offset somewhere. So whether it's on state park, county park land, it's still in the region certainly, but find a way to replant somewhere else, like an offset. Like when you fly on the plane, you pay $30 for a carbon offset. But we want to keep the trees local. So that's the kind of partnership that we're looking for right now.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we've you know what it is, the more people get together, the more ideas we have, the better it gets.
Saw a thing today, I don't remember where, about doing an inventory of all the spaces that you love in your area. And then I can't remember the rest of it, but how to preserve them. But first you do an inventory of everything. People's, backyards that you think are wonderful or whatever. It was interesting. I went.
Yeah. What's the thing that Talemy's got going on? It's the Backyard National Park. I'll have to look up the name of it because it's very interesting. We start creating contiguous spaces or contiguous habitats. If my yard has this and your yard has this, I read something today or the other day that some of these birds, they don't travel more than 500 feet for their whole life. So if you see a chickadee today, it's your chickadee.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
They put up their territory, or they make territory. Yeah.
Yeah. And if there's no food, they die. And if they find food, they live. It's that simple. So we have a responsibility. And that's why I put the word stewardship into part of the title today.
There was a thing recently about owls and hawks, or owls it was. And like last year I had owls here. This is when they mate. So you can hear them if they're here trying to mate. But there has to be rodents and things for them to eat. That's right. Or they're not going to come. And anyway, if we're starting to lose those animals because of other things that we're losing, we're not going to get the owls and the hawks. And
Yep. Yeah, it's like somebody said, it's the time of the everything of everything. We got to consider it.
All the other people, are they here? Or they're not they're not talking. I'll bring up one more thing because I was on it today, a Rights of Nature workshop that Pachamama Alliance put on. It was based on people in Florida that did put a Right of Nature charter in their, or amendment in their charter. And so that, and this workshop was about how to create one in your township or.
Oh, you need to send that to me because we're doing the comprehensive plan for Riverhead right now.
It'll be, it was recorded. So,
okay.
Yeah, it was very good. So I'm going to give you feedback because I'm here. Nobody else is talking.
Don't remember asking, but go ahead. But that never stops you, I know.
I'd like to talk if there's a space.
Oh, Sarabelle, please jump in. You're missing out of a room.
Okay, so I bought my property 40 years ago. It was scrub oak. And in the building of my home, many scrub oak trees had to be cut down. The ones that remained are now 40 years old. They are, I wouldn't put scrub in their title. They are magnificent. They shade my house. However, they are very close to my house. So I'm watching this evolution of how when a tree is nourished, or any living thing, and doesn't have to fight for survival with, you know, the multitude all going for nutrients, to me, they're majestic. And when a storm comes, such as we have had predicted, what is so magnificent becomes terrifying, that they could fall on my house. And for this, and the appreciation, this interaction of the wonderful shade they give and the coolness in the summer and the magnificence of watching them go through their cycles of the seasons. As a homeowner and one who wishes to go solar, everyone says, you gotta cut down these trees. I'm in a conundrum.
Let me offer a suggestion then, Sarabelle. We come across this question a lot now, and one of the possibilities that we're trying to put into Riverhead, I know Southampton's already working on what's called community choice aggregation, and we will give everyone the opportunity to become a buying block, a consumer buying block of renewable energy from upstate or wherever it's from. And it doesn't require you to put these solar panels on your house. The other one is community solar, where a bunch of people get together, 40 or 50 families, and they would, for example, my block would put up, would talk to the farmer next door and put up solar panels, big solar panels along his farm road, where it's not taking away from his production, it's not blocking anything, and so on. So there are opportunities so you don't have to do it yourself. And the trees obviously are the value of the trees is so much greater than just the bottom line of how much energy is costing me. So I'm glad you're aware of that. Where do you live, Sarabelle?
East Hampton.
Oh, then you guys are way ahead. You're way ahead on that. And I wouldn't lose too much sleep about not putting up solar on my own property at that point.
Well, I have solar, but it's not effective because I'm in the woods.
Yep. No, I totally understand. And we know that. And then people who are renting a house don't want to put solar on their landlord's roof. Or my daughter is in her house, they're facing the wrong way. Or there's too many trees and so on. So we're trying to develop an opportunity for people like you and my daughter and renters who can simply buy electricity from a renewable resource without having to go to the expense of solar on their own house. So we're exploring that. I have your email address. I will keep you informed as we go along. Yeah, thanks for bringing
Very
that up. Thanks for bringing that up. And the other thing too is that the economics in the market is changing. So that I put solar panels in 15 years ago. Well, now they're coming to the end of their useful life. They're 1/10 of the cost. They're half the size, and I might consider doing it again. However, LIPA is not paying for my backflow anymore. They want the electricity at 5 o'clock when everybody gets home. I looked out the window tonight and it was almost dark, so I'm not producing anything after 5 o'clock. So the economics of this thing are changing so that solar on your own house may not be the right answer anymore, where we need to put it on flat roofs. We need to put it at the Tanger Mall. We need to put it on top of the landfill. One thing I heard about the landfill, however, there's not a lot of space up there, and it's only going to provide 2 megawatts. Is it worth the money to put it up there? And then you've got to dig the trench to get it into the substation. So even those economic conditions, those market conditions are changing while we speak. So it's not a simple answer. Batteries are becoming more popular, more of a solution. I know that Southold does not want them put where the people want to put them on the wetland. Bad idea. And I also know that when they burst into flame, that it takes 3 days to put out the fire. So we've got a lot. The technology is catching up. It is catching up.
Mark, do you know anything about the sunflower solar panel?
No, I don't.
A very, very light research, but for people that live in the woods, this is a panel that's not flat. It's circular, like a sunflower about to open its petals, and thereby has the ability, as opposed to something flat, to catch every aspect of light. I don't know, just curious if anyone had heard. It just sounded too good to be true.
Well, we're working on a lot of things. The other what you just pointed out is that if you look at the leaves on a tree, they're not all in one flat panel, and they're not all facing south. I mean, and the trees are surviving because of that. And there are technologies out there that are mimicking, which is one of the terms that we've got to start bringing in, is biomimicry. Janine Benyus was the coiner of that phrase. And we need to start mimicking nature because it does it so well. Who are we?
Well,
Thank
that's
you.
what permaculture does a lot of.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, and silver pasture and all the things that Anthony mentioned as well. You know, like, you know, the cows weren't being herded 300,000 years ago. Joanna has given us the 2-minute warning here, and we're going to close the rooms, and hopefully everybody comes back from it. We're going to, this is the reconvene portion, and I know you found all of this interesting, and I hope it was fun. And I would ask the panelists in the same order. Roxanne, will you share some of your attendees' commitments, or maybe comments of your own from the event? See no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Roxanne, there we go.
So we had a great group of folks chatting and yakking. So our farmer in the midst was thinking about how to create his farm as more of a forest floor in introducing more permaculture techniques throughout the farm and adding in terms height, probably of some trees and shrubs. Everybody else was talking about how to reduce their lawn. And we talked about native plants and how and where you might introduce natives to reduce the demands that lawns represent. We talked about specific shrubs, specific trees. The oak came up a number of times as something that might be added as well. Anybody else in the group want to say anything? Did I forget something important? So I think we had a commitment as a group to reduce the lawn and think about what it is we are planting in its stead. Excellent.
Thank you. Tamsin, where I can't find you. There you are. Tamsin.
Okay. So we were talking about various things, a way to reduce maintenance and to increase sustainability. So we talked about pH, we talked about organic fertilizers, Specifically, we talked about corn gluten meal. We talked about chicken manure, best practices for that and for turkey manure. We talked about the pH. We talked about eating weeds. We talked about moss. We talked about what would be the best ground covers when you're reducing your lawn and where you can start to reduce your lawn, and also the least expensive options to replace lawn that has been removed so that you don't suddenly have a huge gap. So I think all the people that were in the session are committed to trying to change up their lawn practices and reduce their lawns.
Wow, excellent. Brian.
So I gave my presentation of my slides, and I think the few group members really enjoyed it. And I think one of the best dialogues we had came at the end when one of the members mentioned how she left the leaves over the winter time on her property and discovered that a slew of native plants grew under there. There was some eastern red cedars, there was some bayberry, there was some low bush blueberry. And I think, you know, when we were kind of talking about that, it kind of is reviving that discussion about what to do about leaves. You know, leaves have, their time has come and we can't treat them as an enemy. You know, why did autumn become this very tidy season of everything being blown into existence? So we just need the chance to, you know, and I think that maybe few in the future, Mark, that we need to assemble a panel and start talking to our representatives, our municipalities about, you know, leaves are not an enemy and they do have value to remain on our properties, and we can't just keep sending them off to the landfill.
I'm going to cut Anthony off again, because Brian, you brought something interesting up. We've been told by our engineering department that no longer will they pick up the leaves in Riverhead. So it is our task on the Environmental Advisory Committee to come up with a social marketing program to make sure that we start using the leaves or get people to start putting them under the bushes. And Doug Tallamy had mentioned, hi Debbie O'Kane from North Fork Audubon, certainly, for bringing Doug Tallamy into a webinar last month. And he brought up something, instead of mulching the leaves, just bring them under the trees and leave them there, because there are things that live underneath the leaves that need the whole leaf when they wake up in the spring. Who knew? So exactly. We're going to add that. We're going to add that to our discussion as well. Anthony.
Mark, could I just ask Brian a question?
Yeah, I guess so. Quickly.
Who is that, Brian, from your group? Because, you know, with the revision of my book, I'm going to have a whole section on what's going to come up under the leaves. So I would love to know who that is. Who would that be?
Do I have your permission?
Yeah, quickly, yes.
Louise Harrison.
Oh, okay. Oh, very well, Karen.
She's lurking in the corner.
Oh, Louise. Good, thanks.
All righty. Anthony, I'm sorry.
Oh, I actually, on that topic of leaves, I actually will, up in the files that you're going to upload, I actually created a nice little informative leave the leaf sign for people in their front garden so that neighbors understand why they're not picking up their leaves in their garden. So we largely spoke about, too, you know, reducing the lawn. A lot of the goals was just reducing the lawn. Two that spoke out to me most were they have dying pines. They're experiencing southern pine beetle damage in their pines, and all their pines to come down on their property. But they are not, instead of just leaving it, they are replacing it with more native plants to further support the birds, to replace the dying ecosystem. And the second one was Karen is going to republish her native plant source book for Long Island. So that's a very big task. And once that's completed, I'm sure everyone will be very happy because they'll know exactly where to go for everything.
Well, I'm going to revise it to a new book.
I'm reading your first one from a mutual friend of 100 years, well, half 100 anyway. Lisa Greco sent me the book. So I'm going through it myself right now. And I would really welcome the second one because I got through the first 8 pages and I had 8 pages of notes. So that's a good thing. Let's wrap up and finish up. Everyone for their attendance and participation today. Please stay safe.